Hello, my children. Now that the Monster Hunter World demo is over, since yesterday, at the time of this recording, we can all finally relax after doing those countless Grey Jaguar speedruns. What are my thoughts regarding the demo? There's random gameplay from me in the background since my capture card hasn't arrived yet, and getting footage from my PS4 to the PC is a little bothersome. The graphics are stunning. If you don't mind 10 FPS herbivores in the distance jerking around and having panic attacks over nothing, then you could potentially walk around the 20 minutes you have each quest and just admire the scenery. It really feels like a breathing and living ecosystem. Dung beetles rolling around 90% of the YouTube content, dog-sized spiders doing nothing but being nightmares to arachnophobics, wasps with green bums with a size that would put Nicki Minaj to shame, birds spawning out of nowhere to feast on animals who died a split second ago, and even horned toads that burp out paralyzing gas to screw you over should you step on them. A truly beautiful world. Moss Wines even returned. And as you all know, Moss Wines are my favorite minions in the franchise. If you are taking a stroll around the map, it feels like a legit hiking tour. So much to explore, but also easy to get lost, even after 3 days of playing. I played on vanilla, PS4, and the performance, even on this beta demo thing, was stellar. I only had 1 or 2 frame drops, and it was only at the beginning of the quest, so nothing to worry about. Even with 4 players and 3 monsters on the screen, I didn't suffer from frame drops or stuttering whatsoever. The gameplay itself is super fun. Remember my "Are those weapons really broken?" video where I kinda addressed the huge uproar that Brave Longsword, Striker Lance and Brave Heavy Bowgun were said to be broken and should be nerfed because everything else was worse, a little bit or kinda much. What I said in this video is that I'd rather have the other weapons to be buffed instead of the good weapons to be nerfed. Guess what? That's what Capcom did, but more about the weapons later on. Let us talk about the monsters. Let's start off with Grey Jaguars, the voracious dreadlock lizard. Everything he does is... you can keep attacking without caring much. His attacks don't knock you back, aside from 2 attacks, which are heavily telegraphed and take some time to build up. Punching back by the very definition. Not surprising considering he's a beginner monster. Jura Todos, for those who are wondering who that is, the Mat Lavazioth, is in the same boat, kinda. Its moves don't really do much, it flinches from everything, and its KO threshold is a fraction of the other big monsters, not including Jaguars. Jaguars KOs after 2 or 3 greatsword tackles. I like the design. It's basically a Mat Lavazioth, who is a coelacanth, an ancient fish with fleshy fins, but the fight is pretty underwhelming. I was never a big fan of Barrett, neither the design nor the fight. He's a 3rd gen monster who behaves like a 1st gen monster, where his main means of attacking is charging. That's basically all that the 1st and 2nd gen monsters did, basically. He didn't really change much. His head smashed into the ground sends you flying now, which kinda sucks. The most noticeable difference is his mud though. Status versus the Hunter is super strong in general, but more on that topic later. If you liked his fight before, not much will be different in World. His cool scream is gone though. He now sounds like kind of a husky goat. Diablos is super weird. He slowed down quite a bunch. His charge and horn shoving attack now have big tails. The latter makes him walk around, which can screw you over if you attempt to do an attack with a long wind up. He can turn around and charge too. We Tigrex now, boys. He was the most fun to fight in the demo, but hitboxes suck tremendously though. His hip check hitbox doesn't keep up with his animation, meaning he can hit you after his body moved past you. His tail is also longer and wider than it looks like, and the messy hitbox can really be noticed once his tail is cut. Super weird. His digging attack hitbox lingers for a long time too. You can get tossed into the air 1 second after he already resurfaced. His roar can now be iframed, but has a large knockback upon guarding, so it kinda evens itself out. The last thing is that his tremor duration is super long, making sure he'll get a hit in should you get tremored. Also his head and horns are separate hit zones now. They seem to take a few pointers from the Diablos Deviant from Double Cross, and bouncing versus Diablos was a huge pain though on the horn and the tail tip. Anjanath, one of the new monsters and kind of poster boy of Monster Hunter World, is looking like a Turkeysaurus shooting snot at trees, and is also able to use fire when he feels like. His fight is kind of weird. Attacks that take him 3 seconds to execute have a long wind-up, making you believe a huge damaging attack is incoming, deal insignificant damage, not even knocking you off your feet, whereas quick charms send you flying and can be spammed. His fight is pretty tame until he activates his fire breath, where embers come out of his mouth. Then his AI changes and he becomes way more scary. The fire coming out of his mouth can stagger you out of animations. His flamethrower attack can almost one-shot you, and is very annoying in general. If you take his head at the right time, while embers come out of his mouth, he falls over like Glavinus after he heated up his mouth and throat, and you dealt enough damage to it. Most of the time I didn't know what the heck he was doing, basically no obvious tells, yet I was doing pretty fine. There are some attacks which you can guess or which you can learn what he will do afterwards, but some attacks, as I said before, they look like a huge attack is coming and you are evading, but you can just keep attacking and you're doing fine afterwards, so it's kinda weird, as I said before. Well, the last monster in the demo is Rathalos. Rathalos, like Diablos, is the apex predator of his map, even though Diablos is an herbivore. You can sum him up fairly easily: worse than Dread King. If you don't know what Dread King is, let me explain. As you all know, Rathalos became worse and more bothersome to fight throughout the generations. He kept staying airborne for longer periods of times, forcing you to use flash bombs before mounting was a thing. Even then, flash bombs are pretty much the way to go. Rathalos comes down by himself, but only after trying his darnest to dive bomb or nuke you to death, and if you didn't bring flash pot ammo for your slinger, no flash wasps for your cat, or using the paraknives you get from the beginning of the game, which are in your inventory, you're pretty much, well, screwed. If you run out, you are forced to mount him, which is another thing I'm going to address later. This isn't always possible, because he moves around a lot in midair and swoops in and on you with Mach 10 speed. With no pattern or opening to abuse, he can basically stay in midair for as long as he wants, until he stomps down, which he usually does after 1 or 2 minutes of you sprinting around, trying not to get obliterated. The only way to snipe him down with weapons is to flinch his head or cut his tail, which is unlikely unless you were close to doing that anyway. He can also alter his altitude, making it completely impossible to hit him without ranged weapons, while he can snipe you as he pleases. I never thought Rathalos could get worse after I saw 4th gen Rathalos and his Deviant, but they really made it happen. He gained a new stomp attack which poisons. His new tail whip can easily be punished and avoided. He has a pretty large tail and it only covers 180 degree of his body instead of the double tail whip, which basically covered 360 degree. His tails are also super weird, the ones that exist. Sometimes he charges at me, I don't even notice it because I don't get hit by it, even though I'm below him. Sometimes I hit his charge attack while being on his side, without understanding what he did after I was blown off my feet. Most of the weapons felt super hype. Greatsword got a new charge, which deals unholy amounts of damage. You can shoulder bash, cancel into new charges, to skip to the strongest charge immediately. The tackle also deals KO damage and increases in strength depending which previous charge level you cancel. So basically if you charge up to a level 3 charge, but want to shoulder bash through a roar or something like that, your shoulder bash, tackle, whatever you want to call it, gets stronger as well, so it's not that bad. Longsword got some kind of Brave Evasion move, which allows you to instantly get a new spirit color if your Fate Slash connects afterwards. Also, it now has some super anime jumping attack called the Helm Splitter, which deals good damage. Aiming sucks a ton though. It also feels like it's kind of lacking in damage compared to the other weapons. I barely played with Shield and Sword, felt a little sluggish. It got a Rising Slash attack which lets you slam down with your shield, akin to the Rising Smash Shoryugeki attack from Generations and Double Turd. Duels are super hype as well. Savage combos, ferocious damage, really good. You feel like an anime character with plot armor, shredding through anything that is in reach. Most likely the strongest weapon in the demo. The damage it dished out was super good. Hammer gained a new pickaxe kind of attack called the Big Bang, I think, which is the attack of choice when a monster is down from a KO, trip or mount. It also gains an enhanced charge, which also adds some of the Brave Hammer moveset. Hunting Horn remained the same moveset wise. I think I only used it twice, so I can't really say much about it. Switch Axe is amazing to play. Its attacks are now badass slashes who look and feel powerful and swift. Talking about the sword mode. After landing some attacks, you superheat your blade, dealing more damage. The elemental discharge attack now lets you stick on the monster, almost ensuring your attacks to hit the monster at all times. You can be thrown off, but it only happened once to me, so you're pretty safe unless the monster does a charging attack, I think. I never stayed in X mode for long amounts of time, so I didn't check if it got something new. Lance got a new stronger guard, which you can initiate after guarding and pressing circle, which would usually do the counter poke. You can now do a step forward, which is a nice change. So basically, the shield of the Lance is now useful. Gunlance can do the same. It also gains 2 moves, a swipe after the slam attack, which is pretty high motion value for a Gunlance move. You can follow up the slam or the swipe with an attack called the Worm Stake. It's as amazing as it looks. It's some kind of metal rod that you stick into the monster's body part, which deals continuous damage and explodes after a while. Glaive got kind of shafted. It felt like hitting with a wet noodle. The air dance thing it didn't do that much damage too, and I also lost the earplug bonus when getting all 3 colors. It is most likely now tied to the Kinsect to add Kinsect skill diversity in general, yet it's pretty weird to take that away from Glaive when they didn't do that much for the Glaive regarding damage. Now to Charge Blade. Charge Blade is basically the same as it was in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate if we talk about its moveset, aside from one new sliding slash which is more bothersome than useful in my opinion. You don't lose your red shield when using an Ultra Burst, which changed your playstyle significantly. If you had an opening, it would be better to use an Ultra instead of a Super most of the times. My very first Diablo's kill with Charge Blade took me 18 minutes with proper, in air quotes, Charge Blade gameplay. When I started spamming Ultras, I could, well, reduce my time to 1/3 of my first Diablo's kill time eventually. I hope it's only like this in the demo, but I wouldn't hold my breath, to be honest. Status elements against hunters were buffed a ton. Ruthless Poison can drain your full HP if you never heal up the damage, which can easily lead to a card. And as far as I know, you had 150 HP in the demo. Because of his tenacity, when he's airborne, he can basically poison you with a flick of his wrist. I'm certain Ruthless Poison was always this potent, so this might be a bad example. A good one is the KO status that you get after being hit or being flashed in quick succession. It doesn't matter how fast you wiggle your stick, you won't break out in time to not get hit, except if the monster decides to not attack you for some reason. The character is immobilized for 5 seconds at least if you harass your stick to the max and then he pats himself or herself on the cheeks taking up 2 more seconds. So no more 2-second breakouts for people with quick fingers. Mod status is like bubble status now. Without the sliding around. You can wiggle but can't move, except if you Superman dive. It doesn't help that Barrett's mud puddles are super big now and they stay on the ground, so basically if you run into it, you gain the mud status again. Which makes it quite bothersome to move around if half the area is covered in thick fluids. Tremor, like I said before, guarantees getting hit since it lasts like 5 seconds as well. And wind press, although not being status, is also very annoying. It has no visual indicator, there's no dust, no wind, nothing. Your character covers his eyes for a while, which is enough for Rathalos to sink in his claws into your soft, meaty body. If you manage to avoid his incoming swoop, you might get wind pressed again. Actually, that's very likely. He once wind pressed me so often that I gave up and let myself getting hit. It was at least a full minute or so, because my trap vanished in the time that I placed a minute earlier. If your weapon isn't sheathed, you most likely won't outrun his claws or the wind press limbo. If you ask yourselves why they did that, I can answer this to you, but only with my own explanation. To make people use the appropriate status negating skills. The skill system changed for the better, in my opinion, since it's now impossible to wear an armor without having at least some active skills. I still don't like being forced into using or doing certain things to help me overcome things without only being able to rely on my own personal player skill or wits. It's more of a personal issue though. I wanted to address the sound and music real quick before I continue talking about issues and pleasant moments I had with the beta. The sound effects are amazing. There's no talking around that. The sounds of most weapon attacks are crisp and sound good. The music, on the other hand, is pretty underwhelming to say the least. I didn't even notice it most of the time. I mean, on my first 2 or 3 hunts I probably did, but after that I was not invested in the music at all. It felt kind of bland, and after listening to the music in my videos, my opinion didn't change at all. I asked some people and they shared my opinion. Maybe others might think differently. The new omnidirectional evasion movement is very good and makes the gameplay feel more fluid, which is kind of weird because I've seen a lot of people say that the controls and the movement feels kind of clunky, which I can't agree with at all. It also helps with positioning and it doesn't really limit you to forward and side rolls, which was only possible in previous games. Especially if the monster likes to screw you over in one way or another. Speaking of monsters and their behavior, the monsters don't really follow their own rules and their movement and AI feels super unnatural. Let me elaborate. Every monster roars now, before they leave to another area to eat or just leave in general. So each time they do a roar, they leave. This roar is different to their regular roar. You can tell if the monster roars and immediately sprints away, digs or takes off into the air, but the monster doesn't pick up on its own behavior sometimes. I had 2 encounters where the others roared, digged, and I was 100% sure that he'd leave the area, since he was also fatigued and started roaring, followed with burying into the ground. So I sheathed and got my bum pierced by Diablos from below. Then he went back into the ground and then left. This happened to me on 2 occasions, so that's pretty weird. It happened to me with Rathalos as well, but with Rathalos it was even more weird. He roared like 3 times and then left. Anjanath sometimes stands around, does his turkey kick half a dozen times in a row while you're below him or behind him on his side. Basically, it's impossible for him to hit you, but he still does it and spams it for a decade. He sometimes runs through the map ignoring you, making you tail him, which kinda gets tedious after 10 or 20 quests of Anjanath farming. The monster moveset is also really unbalanced, meaning that they can basically spam their strongest move like 10 times in a row without having any recovery time to it. especially if you're talking about Rathalos and his dive bombs. And one thing I noticed is that the KO status has been severely toned down. It lasts around 5 seconds now, and the monsters don't do the recovery animation anymore after snapping out of the KO. The thing where they raise their head and shake it around and something like that, which also gives you an opening to attack as well. But that's gone now. The KO threshold on Diablos and Rathalos was also really insane. It took me around 4 super elemental discharges on Rathalos' head to KO him for the first time, whereas tripping his legs grounded him for twice the time, and which is basically less effort. There are many speedrun unfriendly variables in the game, which is a huge bummer for me. Let me throw out an example. Well, I mean, for casual players it won't matter too much, but it might still be a small inconvenience. Imagine fighting Rathalos, getting a fairly decent run, you just want your Rathalos materials, want to practice or whatever. Then Anjanath barges in, tries to sniff your butt while fighting, setting you on fire, not particularly messing around with the Rathalos. Wait, what was that? You're still poisoned by Rathalos, on fire now too, and your HP significantly drained from the occasional body check that Anjanath threw at you? Oh, you card it. Monsters also spawn randomly, and only Rathalos and Diablos had fixed spawns in the demo, which isn't that bad if you use scout flights, etc. So, not a big deal for casual play, but if you're going for an optimized run, it's nothing but annoying. Monsters fighting each other may look cool for the first couple of times, but after a while, you just want to hunt your monster, get your stuff, and be done with it. So, without great jaguars puking in front of you, blocking your way, or other monsters intruding. At least you can move around better now when you're traveling downwards via sliding. This can screw you over though in specific locations, like the desert. In the demo, it happened to me way more times that I'd like. That I've slided down some kind of slopes in the desert, which screwed up everything, basically. Talking about the moving around thing, you can now travel between camps, which is very nice. I quite like it. It's a great mechanic, especially now that the maps are way bigger than before. Time to wrap up the video. Even though I came off a little nitpicky at sometimes, and those complaints were mostly small, except the speedrunner unfriendly thingy, but that's only a personal, well, problem. I'm still pretty positive towards this game, and my hype remained the same, mostly, and I'm definitely going to buy the game. So, should you buy it? I obviously see no reason not to. Beta was fun, I had a blast. Some things annoyed me a little, that's true, but it's only the beta, and maybe some issues I had with it may not be in the full game. All in all, the beta even increased my anticipation for Monster Hunter World, and I will definitely play the ever-loving crap out of it once the main game arrives. Sorry for rambling a little and jumping from topic to topic. I tried my best, and the only thing to say now is see you in Monster Hunter World on the 26th of January. See ya. And now enjoy the random shitty gameplay.
anything useful lying around? it is proving to be elusive. Take a good look at the wildlife map and pay close. You're paralyzed. You'll have to wait for it to wear off. Not that you have a choice. stock is slinger ammo. You can use it to hit things that are far away. Bright moss is slinger ammo. Launch it at walls to light up the area. Looks like you failed the quest this time, but we'll try again soon, right? Right!